Hi and welcome to Sci-Fi Fans. By the title of this episode, you will notice that it's slightly different to the usual show. I got to talk to self-published author Aaron Ryan, who writes science fiction books, and the first book in a trilogy that he has published recently is available on Amazon. So I'm not going to waffle on anymore. I'm going to let him talk to you about his book, and this is the interview that we had a few days ago. So enjoy. Welcome to Sci-Fi Fans, Aaron. As I say, I appreciate you getting in touch, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So I have done a little bit of research, so I'm not totally blind. So I understand this is your first book of a trilogy that you published.
Correct.
And sell it to me. Give us your best sales pitch.
Okay, yeah, got to rub the heads together. So I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I mean, duh, you can see that quite obvious on the shirt. The story actually really just burst out of me in 2023 over 3 weeks' time. So last year I've done a lot of different creative pursuits in my life. One of those was music. I attempted to make a return to the music scene in 2023 and loved it. We had a few gigs, but it's inordinately hard in order to schedule a gig. Or to get on anyone's radar as far as like, hey, they're good, let's have them. So it was the death of a dream, and I thought, I need to create. What do I do? I started and terminated a process of writing a novel in the early 90s. I think I had close to 300 pages on it.
Right, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I had invested a lot of time in it, but it just didn't represent where I wanted to go in my career at the time. So it was called The Omega Room. I gave it the Omega by hitting delete. And I don't know that I regretted that per se, because it allowed me to pursue the directions that I really wanted to go. But in reevaluating what I'm supposed to be doing creatively last year, I thought, you know what I miss? I miss writing fiction, writing a novel. So I want to start it again and see what happens. And it's one of those things where you go out on a limb and you start writing and it just goes, wow. I mean, sounding as unbiased as possible, this is really good. And it's getting better and better and better. And it burst out of me much like an alien queen in 3 weeks' time. Turned out really good. And I have 181 so pages in volume 2 so far. So there you have it.
So what's the book called? I did look it up, but I've forgotten. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. It's actually, I do. I have the old cover. I've since redesigned the cover, but it is called Dissonance, Volume 1, Reality. You can see there. Yeah. And am I backwards? Can you see this? Is this backwards?
I think you possibly are, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here, let me go like this. Is that better? I bet there's a way to flip this, but anyway. So it looks a little different like this, but it does look similar. It's called Dissonance Volume 1 Reality of 3 volumes. It'll be a trilogy. Right. And it's essentially Earth has been overrun in the year 2026 by an alien invasion. They are called Gorgons by us humans, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
No similarity to, Gorgons with snakes in their hair, Medusa, none of that. However, they're called that because they possess a unique ability to a telekinetic ability to paralyze you where you stand and then eat you, consume you.
Right.
So graphic, grisly, just ugh. And there's nothing better than not being able to fight back in a fight, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
That's what they do. They've overrun the Earth in 2026. The book is set in 2042, 16 years afterwards, and mankind has been killed off. About 85% of all humanity has been killed off and living in the shadows.
Yeah.
Our protagonist is part of a, ragtag military leftovers that are living in what's called blockades.
Right.
Performing daily recon missions for survivors, supplies, food, additional ammunition they live in a blockade that's covered in gun towers.
Yeah.
They have some semblance of protection, but life as we know it is over, and it's just we're living in the shadows now and trying to do the best we can to survive.
Yeah. So where does the inspiration for this particular story come from? I kind of get the feeling, just watching one of your previous interviews, that you're a bit like me. You love aliens and science fiction. I mean, best film ever, isn't it?
Best film ever. It really is. It's got so many things going for it.
Yeah.
Aliens is the pinnacle of science fiction cinematic storytelling for me. Cinematic, by the way, not book form. That
Yeah.
would be Lord of the Rings by
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
But it's the apex. I think we had just watched I Am Legend, my wife and I. I'd seen it before, but she had not. So, trying to get her hip with the times. And I loved how Earth, I mean, it's tragic, of course, but I loved the depiction of how Earth was simply just overrun.
Yeah.
Weeds and foliage grown up unrestricted and unrestrained everywhere. Cars in the streets, just littering the streets. Anarchy and mayhem and chaos had broken out, obviously. Lions and elephants and antelope are roaming the streets freely.
Yeah.
And that's part of his food, but so are zombies. So when I first started the story, I wasn't quite sure who my villains were going to be in terms of the alien side of things. We'll more on that later. I think they took on a little bit too close of a form akin to Nazgul and Dementors.
Right.
I had called them druids. I wasn't sure what I wanted, and then I was like, this is we don't need. Everybody's seen this already. I needed something new. So what terrified me as a child? 1981's Clash of the Titans claymation Medusa.
Right. Yeah.
Terrified me. I mean, that freeze frame, where her eyes turn bright green. It's
one of my favorites as a kid.
Yeah, to this day, such a good movie. Such a good movie.
Yeah.
That did terrify me. So I drew upon that for the aliens.
Right. Right. So it's set in the future. So the technology that I'm guessing, if it's only 16 years time or 20 years time, so next generation. So what sort of technology do you envisage us having in the next 20 years to hopefully defend ourselves?
That's a really fair question, and it's really the technology of 2026.
Right.
If 85% of humanity has been killed off in the alien invasion, then we are experiencing arrested development. Factories are not being manned. Innovation has stalled. There's nothing really going on that's revolutionary or new because we're forced to hide in the shadows. So we're using the technology that was of the time, 16 years in the future. And so, when people think of sci-fi, and it is, it does fall into the sci-fi dystopian post-apocalyptic trope genre category. That was really redundant, like very long sentence there. Just edit and abridge that. Sci-fi. It's still just the same weaponry that we've had. But if you think of sci-fi in the future, people think of Star Trek and glossy and antiseptic and clean and shiny. Or Star Wars, on the other end of the spectrum, gritty, dirty. The Millennium Falcon really needs to go through a car wash, and lots of things that just they're used, right? Everything's new in Star Trek and used in Star Wars.
Yeah,
it really falls so much closer to the Star Wars type of grim setting of just mounting the best defense that you can with what you have.
Yeah. All right. So how did we discover the aliens? Are they just kind of happen to come across Earth and think, got a taste of fresh meat here?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it was funny because I was watching the Super Bowl yesterday.
Yeah.
And they had the trailer for A Quiet Place Day 1. And I suppose this is a little bit narcissistic, but as I was watching that commercial, I'm going, hey, there's my movie. It is, I mean, it's Cataclysm plus aliens plus hiding. And there are elements of that, strong elements in my book, because the aliens are, they're called, again, Gorgons. They have tremendous hearing. They can't see very well, but they have tremendous hearing. They're very fast. They're cheetah speed fast.
Right.
Or faster.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's not really a spoiler, but the way they arrived isn't in some fireball that destroyed a building, and there's another one over there and another one over there. They, if I remember how I wrote it, I have to go back and see. I think they were spotted over Venezuela first.
Right. Yeah.
Drifting slowly out of the sky. Just these, what is that? And people's attention is slowly, and then there's another one, and then there are thousands more. and they're suspended at a geostationary orbit for 3 months roughly, and then much like the timer, the countdown in Independence Day, all of a sudden they just click on.
Right.
And they're not in any kind of tubes or anything like that. They're not necessarily humanoid, but they do have some humanoid limbs and whatnot.
Yeah.
And when they reveal themselves and when that timer, that countdown goes off, then they just go into full hunting mode, and you can't really fight back. You can't look at them. You will be paralyzed and frozen and eaten.
It kind of sounds like a little bit of Doctor Who influence there with the Weeping Angels. Are you familiar with the Weeping Angels?
You know, I'm gonna, if you want to just cut off the interview right now, I'd say I've not ever seen any of Doctor Who. I should.
I haven't.
I know. I totally should. My brother-in-law is a huge fan, and so I'm kind of the bane of his existence.
Oh, right. So. Well, the idea of the Weeping Angels is I think they feed off of, they're like time traveling statues that only move when you turn away. So you have to stare at them so you could be in a room full of these Weeping Angels, and you have to stare at them and back out of the room. As soon as you turn your back.
Wow.
And then once they touch you, you then end up going back in time, and there's something that they feed off of when you do that in that process. So the first episode, if you see, is trying to think which Doctor it was. I think it's Matt Smith is when they first come across them. And the episode is called Blink. So Blink. Just look up Doctor Who episode Blink.
Okay.
And I think the themes are very similar. You're paralyzed by fear and unable to move. So how do we fight that then? If we can't move, we're paralyzed.
Yeah. Well, it's very much it's very much a catch-22. We have weapons, but you can't shoot them except at a very last resort.
Yeah.
One of the things, the dichotomies that you really come to understand is so true in Lord of the Rings, and I think it was portrayed really well in the movies as well. You're constantly coming back to this tiny little orb of gold. It's not an orb, but of gold that is so corrupt and nefarious, and you need constant reminders just to throw that back in your face. No, you can't use this. It's horrible. You'll be another Sauron. And so with the Gorgons in my book, granted, they're Marines, they're Army. It's a consortium of what remains of the military who are on daily patrols. They are equipped with guns.
Yeah.
But the Gorgons are very fast. If you shoot them, you may very well down that Gorgon or those two Gorgons that are at you, but you're invariably going to draw in other Gorgons that hear that shot report.
Right. Yeah.
That way. Yeah. So they are they're fast. They are terrifying. And if you are bereft of any kind of self-defense mechanism, any kind of weaponry, you better start fighting with your eyes closed, because it's essentially shadow boxing. I have a visitor that's decided to join us in the podcast here.
No, that's fine.
little pup.
Pup. Oh, great. I've got cats, and quite often one of them will jump up on me. You'll just see this little bit of grey or black and white. Oh, lovely. Is it Labrador?
Yep, she's a lab hound pointer.
Right.
12-year-old Macy girl. Up. She's occupies that chair while I do my voiceovers.
So how long have you been a voiceover artist then, Aaron?
Yeah, so I've been doing it since 2016 full time. That's my bread and butter. But there's a lot of things that are happening to the voiceover realm in terms of, last year we had the SAG-AFTRA strike.
Yeah.
There was economy issues. There were ad spends that were down. And then on top of that, it's the ever pervasive growing nemesis for voiceovers, which is AI.
Yeah.
AI voices, they have a long way to go before they actually really contend on the same level that humans can. I mean, isn't this just, can you believe we're even talking about this?
I know. Phenomenal.
It's frightening. And it's not frightening to the same extent that it's simply angering.
Yeah.
Why would you want to supplant perfectly good working humans that are directable? They can emote. They can. Anyway, it's a never-ending battle. I've been doing it though since 2016, and I'm the voice of United Healthcare, which is one of the biggest healthcare providers in the country, and love it. Very grateful. So it's a little slow right now, but it's very
Sure.
great.
So how have you been able to weave any experiences of being a voiceover actor into the story? Has that given you any read anything that's inspired, or is there any characters based on how you portray other characters in other books or stuff?
That's a really fair question. There is actually mention, and my brother-in-law, I mentioned him twice now. Boy, hi Mike. He observed, rightly so, in his review of my book that we're trying to be quiet. We're trying to eke out an existence in the shadows. So as much as we can do to stifle the noise, even a sneeze, if you've got a cold. So you can see the studio is lined with these acoustic tiles, and so you will come upon a setting, without a spoiler here of the book, you'll come upon a setting where they have actually incorporated those and many other things in order to preserve the silence. That's more of a detail. There isn't any sort of character trait or anything like that. I will say, though, that I'm not a big audiobook narrator.
Right.
I don't do that a lot. It just takes way too long to do, and it doesn't pay very well, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So I do commercial and e-learning, but I did narrate my own book, and it was funny because everyone who knows that I'm a voiceover artist, like, wherever will you get someone who will narrate your book? I was like, so I did it, but it was
someone that's got the talent, the skills, the equipment, the location. Yeah, just a small issue for you.
just has the voice. Yeah, I really was a pleasure to do, but boy, there is it was hard. It was hard writing specific sections of the book because I did have to kill off a character, and it's a character that you understand and you follow, and you might grow partial to. So it was very difficult, and I became disassembled. I was an emotional wreck after writing their death, after editing their death, and then I had to narrate their death. And you'll hear it in the audiobook. I'm frankly sobbing at the end. I had to take a break.
So they're definitely dead then. They're not going to come back in the second or third book. They're 100% dead, because that's something I think that creatively is non-existent. If you look in any media, modern media at least, people just don't die.
Right. Well, I mean,
it's definitely dead, yeah.
Yeah, not 8 out of the 9 Fellowship characters made it all the way through the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they, by all rights, with all the combat that they've been in, they should be dead, especially the hobbits. So,
but there isn't anyone that's died then comes back, because
no one comes back. But I mean, Wayne, I did not want to kill off this character. I really didn't, because it's a departure, and they no longer exist.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you've sewn into that character. However, just like in Lord of the Rings, they keep coming back to this little band of gold that is so, you need a reminder of that. There is staging, there's a long journey, there's dialogue that happens, and in and amongst that, before and after that, you need to have a reminder, a very visceral, tangible reminder of how incredibly deadly these things really are.
Yeah.
So I had to remind people, and that, of course, cost the life of one of the characters, which was just, I don't want to talk about it.
So this is part 1, and you work on part 2. So have you got this all planned out? What's your writing style? How do you know where the story's going?
That's a really, I love being asked that question, because there are 2 different modus operandi of authors. One is a planner, and the other is a pantser. So I am what I call a plantser, just combining both of those. So I don't have the storyboard, with the 3x5 cards and all that stuff, and just seeing the flow. I haven't ever really worked that way. I am old school. I use Microsoft Word. I keep a running narrative, and it is kind of a very organic method of storytelling. So it is more pants than plan. However, in the pants, flying by the seat of your pants, for those who are tuning in and don't know what that means. I assume everyone knows what planner means. But the pantser style is just kind of fly by the seat of your pants. But there are guideposts ahead of me. So as I'm scrolling down with my font and typeface filling up the screen, below that are mileposts and markers that I know I need to get to at some point. It's just how I get there is a creative weaving of threading the journey along with our protagonists.
Well, you're in good company, because my understanding is Stephen King is a pantser, and J.R.R. Martin, I believe he's also a pantser.
J.R.R. Martin?
Yeah, I believe so. I could be wrong, and someone would be busy on their keyboard. You've got that wrong. He's plans. I mean, that might be why we've been waiting over a decade for one particular book. Who knows?
Yeah, could be. That's funny. Wow. Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of Stephen King. I read him when I probably shouldn't have been reading him, because I was terrified of the stuff that I read.
Yeah.
I was a young guy. I mean, I wasn't like 6 or 7 like that, but that would be horrible parenting on the part of my parents. Here, read a Stephen King book. Good night. It was nothing like that. Yeah. I remember reading what is the name of that story? There's a 4-book set by Stephen King under the moniker of the Bachman books, Richard Bachman.
Right.
And there is I can't remember the title of the story, but it is like an oil slick on a lake, a small pond, and these college people are swimming in it, and this oil slick is actually a monster.
Right.
And the slick, gets tangled in their hair and pulls them back and just absorbs them, and just blood spews. It's just totally macabre and grisly. And anyway, it's I didn't know he was a pantser, but that probably makes more sense, because that's grisly scenes like that take a little bit of like spontaneity to surprise you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So with the first book, is it obvious that the second one's you're working on a second one, or does it have a rounded end? Does it end nicely and hint at a sequel, or is it?
That's a really good question too. So basically, I mean, if you pick this up, you're going to see volume 1.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the dead giveaway. But I'm a big fan of trilogies. I love trilogies, and I love quadrilogies. And so a trilogy that was made into a quadrilogy is The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I love The Hunger Games at the end of movie number 2, which was Catching Fire. Katniss is extracted from the arena, and she finds that District 12 has been just completely eviscerated, firebombed. Nothing's left.
Yeah.
And Gale tells her that, and then you see her at the end. She's she's grappling with this new truth, and she's crying, and the crying just gives way to anger, and then she looks at the just dead set expression, looking right at the camera, and then the Mockingjay graphic. Well, I love that scene, and I in many ways very, very similar to that. The ending of Volume 1 pays homage to that transition, because you can very much see that whole scene playing out visually as the Hunger Games one did. So, thus, to answer your question, you see right there. If you didn't catch this,
yeah, it's all right. Yeah. As soon as you said, when it says Volume 1, I was like, oh, yeah, that's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Shucks.
Yeah.
How are you finding it? Because you're self-published, aren't you? This is your first. So this is your very first self-published book.
It's not my very first self-published book.
Right.
So I self-published a work of poetry many years ago, and then I am a voiceover artist. I've published, I want to say 6, but I think it's actually 7, or maybe it's 5 and it's actually 6 voiceover business books under my former stage name. Those are on Amazon.
Right.
And so very familiar with the KDP process, although I kind of wish I would have tried Ingram Spark and seeing how that would go.
Yeah.
But there's a familiarity there that just, naturally made me gravitate towards KDP. So 6 or 7 of those, but this is my first fiction, published work of fiction.
Yeah. So how is publishing your first fiction book different compared to non-fiction books? Obviously, the process is relatively the same. You still got to have your manuscript, you go through the formatting processes. But is there a different mindset doing fiction to non-fiction?
I think there's a much wider audience, and granted, my voiceover books are not only nonfiction; they're catered to a business audience.
Yeah.
So the genre, the niche is really small. The target is super hyper focused for that side of it. Fiction is, there's science fiction, and then there's dystopian and post-apocalyptic, and then there's steampunk, and all these different subgenres. Aliens, alien invasion. So you really have to be just so much more laser focused on getting the categories right, the blurb right, the description right, the keywords right, your KDP ads right, Facebook ad targeting right. There's so many more things you have to worry about getting correct. And the push for it, I really didn't have to push so much for the voiceover books because I was part of a big voiceover community and they knew who I was, and they just, oh, he wrote a book and there you go.
Yeah.
This requires just a heavy focus on, we joke that it's an author's life is 95% marketing and 5% writing books.
Yeah.
Pretty much it. Or no, it's actually, if I remember right, it's like 70% marketing, 20% writing books, 10% staring off into the void.
That sounds about right. So,
yeah.
So what's the challenge? What's the biggest hurdle then for you getting this particular book into people's hands? Because you've got the experience of KDP, and you probably you would understand keywords and all that. So what's the challenge of getting this book? What challenges have you had, basically?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that I realized, not necessarily to my frustration, but to my frustration, is that if you publish, especially in a trilogy, if you publish something on KDP and then you approach a publisher, an actual publisher, well, your book's already published. It's independently published. So you would have to unpublish it, let it filter out of the system, and then if they even showed interest, then you'd go through a publisher. However, traditional publishers, I've talked to more than a few of them. One of them, actually, a traditional publisher, cautioned me against going with a traditional publisher. He said, I'm like, now, wait a minute, you're a traditional publisher, right?
Yeah.
And I had to clarify. But he said, no, you're doing fine. You know, it's already published on KDP. You're doing your marketing. You got your blurb. You got everything set up. Just, I would tweak this and this and this. You have so much more control as a self-published author. You have so much more say in terms of the direction. But the challenges are numerous. One is getting a literary agent. I would love to have a literary agent. I have 5 agents for voiceovers, so why don't I have a literary agent yet?
Yeah.
At one point I had like 7 or 8 or 9 VO agents, but it became redundant. So it's getting a literary agent. It's finding the right keywords and tags and categories and KDP ads and Facebook ads and TikTok ads and Instagram ads. Getting all that calibrated, marketing, stuff like this. Wayne, I'm so grateful for an opportunity to come aboard a great podcast and share about my book.
Thank you.
But you have to market all that. You have to. A lot of people really don't like the marketing. They love their book. They're so proud of it, but ain't nobody gonna care unless you tell people. You got to reach out.
That is true.
Yeah.
So, have you reach out to other people within the self-publishing community? Well,
I mean, I think the overwhelming majority of people who have a book created do go the self-publishing route because it's just so much easier now. It's the new normal.
And what about editing? How have you tackled? Because that is a conundrum, editing.
Yeah. So I'm going to be really frank. And transparent. My editor, I'm going to fire her. She is, if you're watching, hi, thanks, it was fun. It just wasn't good editing. I think she ran it through Grammarly and that was it.
Yeah.
But there's so many different things that I found later, like, an open quote with a missing closed quote, or vice versa, or both.
Yeah.
That's a quotation, but there's no quote marks, and I forgot it and you didn't catch it. So I'm doing a lot of self-recrimination there, but also, the other thing too, though, is that I realized I bet KDP, the staff there, hate me. And here comes Aaron Ryan again with another version of his book publishing. because I've had to publish and republish because in the audiobook recording process, I thought I'd caught all the errors in writing and review and beta readers.
Right.
I caught so many more as I'm narrating.
Yeah.
And going, oh, and then you got to stop, go back, take out that part because that's invalid. Then you got to go back and correct what you have in the book so they're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, anyway, I did not invest the amount of money that I should have into quality proofreading and editing, and I will not make that mistake the second time around.
So you say beta readers. How did you get your beta readers? Was that an easy process?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the same with ARC readers. So beta readers, and ARC, for those who don't know, is an advanced reader copy. You're basically setting up a relationship where they read your book and they promise to leave a review because those reviews help gain traction. And so beta readers are composed, I think, for a lot of people, predominantly of friends and family.
Yeah.
And they become your ARC readers. Beta readers, though, there's people, any service can be bought and sold now. So you go on Fiverr and you'll find those services really affordably sometimes, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be proficient.
Yeah.
Your editor is, in all intents and purposes, a beta reader. And I think that it's just, if you seek and you shall find, there's plenty of them out there. It's just simple Google search and community groups. And I actually happened to, it was really cool. I joined the authors and writers only group on Facebook. It was 32,000 members strong.
Yeah.
There are other groups that are, larger and smaller. But mine is one of the larger ones. And I just happened to come at the right time because the original admin said, I can't do this anymore. It's grown too big and there's too much to manage and there's a lot of politics and things that happen. And so would anyone like to be an admin? And I went, and it was great. So I'm the new admin of that group. And I love having access to all of these authors with great stories, and you can find beta readers in there.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because, I think this is something that has changed writing and publishing over the last 10 years, at least, is social media. You've got to have a social media presence. So where can people find you on your socials? Whereabouts?
Yeah. Is that a question for me?
Yeah, that is. How people pick, because you need social media, hence podcasts and YouTube and everything else. So somebody listening or watching this, where can they find you on social media? Yeah,
that's the best question ever. I love that. So those questions are so helpful because it just gains traffic and all that stuff and awareness. So if you go to dissonancetheseries.com, dissonancetheseries.com, you'll see at the bottom there are social media links. You can also go to cards/author Aaron Ryan, and that's basically my link tree. It's basically the .cards domain has, you can put a subdomain after that. So .cards/author Aaron Ryan.
I will be putting the links in the description anyway. So
thank you. Yeah, all of them are there. All the socials are there. Yeah. I'm a really big fan of blogging. I love blogging. I've used to do a huge blog for voiceovers. So if you go to the website, and then I call it enlisting because it's a military alien invasion dystopian book. So you can sign up for the blog, but really you're enlisting against the war, in the war against the aliens.
Right. Okay.
So enlist at the blog, and then you can be kept up to date for when volumes 2 and 3 drop.
Okay. So we pick up a copy of your book. What kind of themes and stuff can we look forward to reading and discoveries without giving too much away about the first one? So we know it's an alien invasion. I like that they paralyze you with fear. So what are any other themes to keep an eye out for?
Guard your words carefully, Aaron. Okay, no spoilers. So I think with any great story, there's another story. It's not a good story unless there's just different threads woven together. And so what our protagonist finds, he's a sergeant in the Army, and there's a tragedy that happens. It didn't need to happen. Why? This was so pointless, useless waste of life. And so he's reckoning with that, as is, you know, the rest of his troop against these aliens. But he's finding that he's fighting a war on multiple fronts, and there seems to be kind of, for lack of a better word, an Illuminati behind the scenes that are, you know, moving chess pieces around. And, you know, he's just a grunt. He's expendable, as are his team to them. So it's really a story on two fronts, where obviously the chief villains that we see are the Gorgons. Yeah. But you always have some just nutcase behind the scenes who is fouling up the works, and you end up fighting a war on two fronts, holding this at bay while trying to fight that, and then vice versa. So Jet is unfortunately discovering that, and he's a justice seeker. So he's going to be not crusading, but he's slowly coming to an awareness where something needs to be done. And right. Some plots are coming to light that this is actually how we're intending to fight back, and he doesn't support that. So he has to come to an ultimatum of choice and choose to fall in line or to, you know, become a renegade. Right. And that's really kind of where it's happening. You don't find all of that out in the first book, but he's slowly progressing to that level. But there's romance, there's comedy, there's good relations, there's adventure, there's a palpable fear and tension around every corner. And yeah, there's survivors lurking in the shadows and forming little, you know, bases from which to just kind of survive. We're all in survival mode, and running into some of those as he threads his way through Earth, Clarkston, Tennessee in 2042.
That sounds really interesting. And where can people buy books? Is it just available on Amazon?
No, you can actually go to my site, dissonancetheseries.com, and then you actually could go to the shop page, and you'll see autographed versions of paperback and hardcover there. Yeah. But you'll also see the links to Amazon and KDP, sure, paperback and hardcover and Kindle there. Okay, so where is it? Just available in the US, or is it worldwide distribution? Oh, worldwide. Yeah, I've got expanded distribution on it, so you can get it all over. Cool. All right, well, that sounds really interesting, Aaron. I'm really glad to have spoken to you, and so you got in touch. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. Anything else you'd like to mention? You'd like to say? Oh man, yeah, a loaded question. I think what became apparent to me as I was writing this book was that we're just, you know, it's really tragic and sad, as polarized as we are in our world today. Things haven't changed in 2042, and everyone is still kind of fighting for their own endeavors and aims. Not everyone, but it's a hearkening back to something Rodney King said during the O.J. Simpson trial, post-trial riots. Can we all get along? Yeah. And boy, 16 years after an alien invasion, we're still not working in harmony. We're still not getting along, and there's still plots and things happening that have just totally hijacked the focus away from us. That the focus should have been to kick these aliens to the curb and get them off the planet. Yeah. But you know, we're doing that to some extent. But how we're going about doing that, how some people are going about doing that, is really nefarious and selfish. So it's sad. It became a double tale. So don't do that. Work together, be in unison, harmony. And I agree. I agree. It's about time we did come together as one species, and we don't see differences. We just see what makes us who we are, which is human. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. So I won't. Thank you very much for joining me. Yeah, thank you for having me, Wayne. Appreciate it. You're welcome. If you enjoyed that interview with Aaron Ryan about his book, then go and check it out on Amazon. A link will be in the description below. As well as Aaron, I have spoken to other authors, and their interviews are available in the listings, so do check them out as well. And if you're a self-published author or writer and you'd like to come on the show, then do get in touch. Details are on my webpage. And thank you very much for watching or listening, and I'll see you very soon. Thank you.